Abortion is one of those issues that can divide family and friends. Sometimes people with particular opinions can tend to dominate in the media, as well as in our ordinary conversations. Abortion can be a difficult topic to discuss, especially if someone close to us has experienced an abortion, and we may not wish to further wound them by bringing the subject up. Many Catholics can also be confused or misunderstand the Catholic position on abortion. Many people know that the Catholic Church opposes abortion, but may not have heard the whole of the story. They may not realise that in raising awareness of this sensitive issue, the Church wants to offer help, compassion and love. She wants to reach out to all those affected by an unplanned pregnancy or a previous abortion and offer them help, forgiveness and healing. There's much goodwill in the Australian population. Significantly, 87% of the community said that they strongly supported initiatives to reduce abortion, including access to counselling and practical aid. The following questions and answers may help you, the viewer, to understand the compassion of Christ when it comes to this issue. Each year, approximately 1 in 4 pregnancies end in abortion. Around 90,000 abortions occur each year in Australia. At least 1 in 3 women have had an abortion or will have an abortion based on current rates. Australia has one of the highest rates of surgical abortion in the world. Many pregnant women actually feel as though they have no other choice than abortion. We are hearing from many women that the people they can usually rely on for support may be the very ones that insist they have an abortion. She might not want an abortion, but might feel overwhelmed by anxieties, pressures and fears. She might feel abandoned and believe that continuing the pregnancy will threaten her future. For many women, the right to choose an abortion has become an obligation to choose abortion. Research shows that over 80% of women go against their own conscience in choosing abortion.
It's not so much the case of the Church telling women what they can and cannot do. Women facing an unplanned pregnancy, or one that's problematic in some way, will ultimately make that decision themselves. Of course, there are cases, which sadly are not so infrequent, where women are coerced into abortion by a husband or partner or some other person. But even apart from these cases of overt coercion, what is becoming clear is that women sometimes feel they have no real choices. A recent survey, in fact, showed 80% of women who had abortions felt that they had had no real choice, that there were no alternatives to abortion that they were aware of. The Church's response to abortion is based on her desire for what is truly good, for the woman and for the child. And I would think that in anyone's eyes, having 80% of women in such a situation feeling that they don't have real practical options is not a good scenario for women. Now, most people know that the Catholic Church opposes abortion. We've got that message across loud and clear. What most people don't know is that this is not the whole of the Church's response to abortion. There are 2 other key aspects of her response that help fill in the whole picture. The first is the Church's concern to offer support to pregnant women, whatever the circumstances in which they became pregnant. The second is the Church's concern to offer welcome, healing, forgiveness and compassion to women who have had an abortion. Let's look at the issue of practical support. Increasingly, far too often it's the woman who is left alone with the responsibility of caring for the new life growing within her. And while for many women that is a great privilege and a joy, for others in different circumstances it can be a very difficult thing to take on. No one should be left alone in these circumstances. In fact, the Church has a long history of providing support and compassion in situations where no one else is doing so. Likewise, in our current context, where a woman has no supports around her and feels isolated, and the only option that others are putting to her is abortion, the the church community should be there for her. And she should know that we are there for her, offering genuine alternatives, including real, practical support. That can mean a variety of things in different circumstances. Supporting her emotionally through friendships or professional counselling, working to find ways that she can continue her education if that's an issue, helping her find appropriate housing or creches, even something as simple as taking her to medical appointments. Now, I would hope, and be very confident in fact, that any woman who was pregnant and needed this sort of support would find it if she turned to any local parish community, because all those communities are full of people of goodwill and practical charity. The reality, though, is that for most women, the church is the last place they would turn to for help. So sure are they of the church's opposition to abortion, that if a woman is confused, uncertain, feeling desperate, if the thought of abortion has even crossed her mind, she may think she cannot turn to the church in her confusion. Now, the church already offers support and counselling in various ways, but the hard reality is that most people surveyed could not name one agency or avenue of help they might go to if they needed these services. This means the church needs to get much better at having practical support networks in place, and just as important, in getting the message out that these supports are there. This is what the Walking with Love program is about: parish-based responses and support for pregnant women. With these in place, there is the hope that women who face an unplanned pregnancy will know that the same church which opposes abortion also offers alternatives and says, if you do want to keep this child, no matter what your circumstances, we will be there to walk with you, to help you find a way, and to welcome you and your child into our lives, our families, and our community.
In firmly rejecting pro-choice, it is necessary to become courageously pro-woman, promoting a choice that is truly in favour of women. It is precisely the woman, in fact, who pays the highest price, not only for her motherhood, but even more for its destruction, for the suppression of the life of the child who has been conceived. The only honest stance in these cases is that of radical solidarity with the woman. It is not right to leave her alone.
No, the Church does not condemn women who have had an abortion, no more than she condemns any person. The Church may condemn sin, but never the sinner. In relation to abortion in particular, the Church is coming to realise more and more clearly that abortion can be one of the most difficult decisions a woman will ever make. For many women who choose abortion, it is an agonising choice, not a simple, cool, logical decision. The Church does not abandon her or shun her. The compassion and healing of Christ are always available. At the same time, while the reality is that the Church's compassion, forgiveness and healing are always available, once more we face the other part of the reality, that most women, knowing the Church's stand against abortion, would never think to turn to the Church for that support after having an abortion. We need to be far better at letting women know that they are welcome, that the Church is comprised of broken, wounded and sinful people, and is always ready to welcome other broken, wounded and sinful people. We as a Church need to be far better at ensuring that we are the face of the Good Shepherd, seeking the lost, bringing back the stray, bandaging the wounded and making the weak strong. We as a Church need to stay with the woman who has had an abortion. We need to be with her in her agony, her shame, her confusion, her fear that she has committed the unforgivable sin. We need to be there whenever she needs us, soon after the abortion, or 5 or 10 or 50 years later, when she may still be carrying the pain and shame of this experience and thinking, as some women do, that she cannot be forgiven. To abandon anyone who finds herself in this position would be to be like the priest or the Levite on the road to Jericho, who passed by on the other side of the road, rather than the Samaritan who was moved with compassion. Pope Benedict, in reflecting on that parable of the Good Samaritan, has called the Church once more to be the compassionate love of Christ, to be oil on the wounds, for all who are suffering. These are his words.
Yes, the men and women of our day sometimes truly find themselves stripped and wounded on the wayside of the routes we take, often without anyone listening to their cry for help, attending to them to alleviate and heal their suffering. Only by assuming an attitude of merciful love is it possible to approach in order to bring help and enable victims to pick themselves up and resume their journey through life.
Abortion is not, as many people mistakenly believe, an unforgivable sin. Christ and the Church are waiting to forgive, heal and restore hope to women and men who have been involved in abortion. Blessed John Paul II wrote very compassionately to women suffering after abortion, encouraging them to seek help and forgiveness.
The Church is aware of the many factors which may have influenced your decision, and she does not doubt that in many cases it was a painful and even shattering decision. The wound in your heart may not yet have healed. Certainly what happened was and remains wrong, but do not give in to discouragement and do not lose hope. Try rather to understand what happened and to face it honestly. If you have not already done so, give yourselves over with humility and trust to repentance. The Father of mercies is ready to give you his peace in the sacrament of reconciliation. To the same Father and his mercy, you can with sure hope entrust your child. With the friendly and expert help and advice of other people, and as a result of your own painful experience, you can be among the most eloquent defenders of everyone's right to life.
The Church is painfully aware of the serious and far-reaching effects of abortion, on the unborn child certainly, but also on the woman, and in fact anyone involved in the decision. This is one reason the Church unashamedly maintains its pro-life position. This is one reason why she continues to call both individuals and society to find alternatives to abortion. Not to condemn those who have been involved, but to warn against the harmful effects which it brings, and to prevent further loss of innocent human lives and further wounding of hearts and minds.
The often unacknowledged grief and pain associated with a past abortion can be the source of profound emotional and spiritual suffering. But through the sacrament of reconciliation, pastoral care, professional counselling and other post-abortion ministries, Christ reaches out to women and men to restore spiritual, emotional and mental health to those wounded by abortion and to assist them on the path of conversion and healing. Pope Benedict recently explained that our first duty is to approach these people with love and consideration, with caring and motherly attention, to proclaim the merciful closeness of God. It is He who is the true Good Samaritan, who has made Himself close to us, who pours oil and wine on our wounds, and takes us into the inn, the church, where He has us treated, entrusting us to her ministers and personally paying in advance for our recovery. As well as receiving God's forgiveness, women and men must also forgive themselves if genuine healing is to occur. Pastoral counselling or participation in some other form of post-abortion ministry, such as Rachel's Vineyard retreats, is often an important part of this healing process. Ask your local parish or diocese how to contact the pastoral care team or Walking with Love or Rachel's Vineyard in your area.
A few years ago, I went to the National Conference of Rachel's Vineyard Retreats. At that conference, I heard the sharings of a number of people, both women who had had abortions and men who had been affected by abortion. As a priest, as someone who seeks to have the heart of the Good Shepherd, who wants to help people find freedom from anything and everything that binds them or burdens them, I was very moved by these stories. For here were women talking openly of two things. On the one hand, they spoke of their pain, their sense of guilt and shame, their sorrow for what they had done to their children. And on the other hand, they spoke of having found in these retreats the forgiveness, the healing, the compassion of Christ, and discovering that this was far greater than their pain, their guilt, their sorrow. I was hearing in a particularly powerful way of the power of the grace of Christ that is available through the Church when she is open to people who are struggling and in pain. As one woman said after such a retreat, "On the last day of the retreat, I knew I had been forgiven by God, by my children, and by the Church. In a second, I felt the love of God flow in and was fully restored by Him. I was reborn."
Human life is sacred and inviolable at every moment of existence, including the initial phase which precedes birth. All human beings, from their mother's womb, belong to God who searches them and knows them, who forms them and knits them together with His own hands, who gazes on them when they are tiny, shapeless embryos, and already sees in them the adults of tomorrow, whose days are numbered and whose vocation is even now written in the book of life.
Through initiatives such as this DVD and Walking with Love, the Church aims to encourage and inspire the Catholic community and all people of goodwill to actively support people in difficult circumstances. We hope to encourage Australian Catholics to put into action in a practical way the command of Christ to love one another as He has loved us. We need to walk with people in a practical, loving, compassionate way that makes a difference to their lives. We also want to send a heartfelt thanks to the many people around Australia who are already working, and in some cases have been working for decades, to help give women real alternatives to abortion. Abortion is a tragedy for everyone involved. Out of love and concern, the Church wants to spare women this suffering and to protect the lives of her unborn children. She wants to counsel and guide women and their families away from such heartache, and at the same time she remains a voice for the unborn child whose voice is lost. The Church exists to defend the lives of the weakest and most vulnerable. Women's experience, recent scientific evidence, and Church teaching are not at odds, but are uniting in proclaiming the dignity of the unborn child. This short DVD only presents an overview of Catholic thinking on abortion and the surrounding issues. We expect that you would have further questions. We particularly encourage you to gain a deeper sense of the Church's teaching in this area by reflecting on the questions covered here and by following the links to find additional information. We encourage you to become more involved in positive alternatives which affirm the dignity of every human life. For every act that shows love and support for others contributes to the building up of a culture of life and love.